Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, the knives are out for Dharma. I didn't see this coming. Now, often you hear the cries of exploitation and so forth when people do movies on serial killers or TV series on serial killers or true crime. But the reality is, true crime does make money. There's nothing wrong with a TV show being based on a serial killer as long as it's not exploitative and doesn't focus more on glorifying the killer rather than actually exploring the crime and showing the victims and what their families went through. And that's something this series definitely does. And it's something they said in the beginning, which I missed because I didn't see any press about this series. I didn't know it was coming out until a couple of days before it did, and then it was just here. They said very clearly they don't want to do another series that tries to humanize him or glorify him or focus on him. They just wanted to focus on the people in the communities that were affected by him. Now, the series does spend an episode or two of its 10 episodes focusing on Jeffrey's childhood and so forth, which is a good example of what not to do with a child. I think it's totally justified. And I think it's important to explain him. You don't have to... I don't see anything wrong with humanizing him. He was a human being. He did horrific things, but he was a human being. And to make him into a monster, it's just too easy. It's like, oh, we don't have to explore what we did to him or how he became what he was. He was just a monster, so we don't have to think about it. And then we can separate him from us. No, he was one of us. And, what happened to him can happen to others in our community. So we need to be aware of how we deal with children and people with psychological problems, mental illness and so forth. So people who are going on about that, they really are just in denial. They just want to live in their little bubble where there's good people and bad people, and the bad people are monsters, and there are different species, and we don't have to worry about ever, being anything like them. And it's just some weird form of denial. So there's that. Now, people who obviously haven't watched the series are just doing the usual, oh, it's another exploitation. Why do we need to see his story again? Why? Because we don't understand why he did what he did. And this is the first time we've actually seen a depiction of what the other people who were affected by the crime went through, and not just the immediate victims and what happened to them, but their families, the people in the community, the people, his neighbours, his family, his father. This show is brilliant. It does exactly what so many movies and series on serial killers don't do, and murderers don't do. So the fact that these people are attacking this, they need to just shut up. And I mean, with the exception of the relatives who actually have something to say and have a right to have something to say, although I'll read what the relatives said. I'm not telling anyone not to watch. I know the true crime media is huge, but if you're actually curious about the victims, my family and Isabel's are pissed about the show. It's re-traumatizing over and over again. And for what? How many movies, shows, documentaries do we need? As many as it takes to actually explain it. And for people to get tired of it, I'm sorry, that's what the audience wants. That's what entertainment does. And it's documentary, it's educational, and it's also entertainment. And you can't ask studios not to make money, but they're not even trying to do that so much with this. They are actually trying to tell your story. She said, when I saw some of the show, it bothered me, Isabel said, especially when I saw myself, when I saw my name come across the screen and this lady saying verbatim exactly what I said. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought it was me. Her hair was like mine. She had the same clothes. That's why it felt like reliving it all over again. It brought back all the emotions I was feeling back then. Well, don't watch it. I'm sorry, but don't watch it. Of course you're going to relive it if you watch it being retold. And this is the lady who went off. She really went off, and they did an amazing job of replicating her character and the performance of the actor. And I know she's a real person, and that was her experience, but it's something I think people needed to see what that did to the relatives. And I was shocked the first time I saw her victim impact statement, the victim impact statement. Rita Isabel was the sister of the victim Errol Lindsay, and she said she was not contacted by the producers. Now, I think they could have let her know, we are basically depicting you, and we are. I mean, they didn't do a dramatization of her. They literally used her what she said directly from the court statements and everything. So it's not like they took any license with it, but they did replicate her victim impact statement, and they could have at least let her know that it was in there. But she did choose to see it. You don't have to watch it. I mean, the only thing I have to relate to this was I had a cousin who died in an accident, and it was on the news before we knew it had happened, and they actually showed him lying on the ground half covered up, and that's how we found out that he was dead. And I can still remember seeing his boot sticking out from under this blanket. And you know, it's a horrible thing to have to see something like that, and to have someone killed, like murdered, like the way he was, and then to see that over and over again, it would be really horrible. And like, you don't really have a choice, you know. But I mean, we didn't know when we were watching the news we were going to see our cousin, you know, lying dead on the ground. But she knew that documentary was probably going to deal with, you know, her relatives. So she could have chosen not to watch that. She couldn't choose to see random advertising and see news articles, you know, things like that pop up. But yeah, she didn't have to actually watch it. So I'm siding a little with the filmmakers because they could have let her know, but she didn't have to watch. I mean, I guess you would, because you want to know what they're saying about your relative and all that. You probably feel that you have to, but it still is your choice. They're not making her watch it. They're not putting it in front of her and torturing her deliberately or anything. So I think people criticizing the show are wrong. I mean, they picked the wrong serial killer show to attack, because this is probably the best example of looking at the whole situation, how it affected the whole community and all the people involved, instead of just, like a lot of movies have really exploited the situation by glamorizing or making the person into a hero, or you know, just there's a lot of really exploitative, over the top, taking huge license, you know, serial killer movies and TV series out there. This Dahmer monster, the story of Jeffrey Dahmer, is not one of them. So I think people are just jumping on the bandwagon, not the families, but just the critics, the reporters, whoever. Yeah, I think generally they're kind of right to criticize these sort of TV series about serial killers and movies about serial killers, because most of them are exploitative. If you look at like the Ed Gein one that starred the guy who played Jason Voorhees, Kane Hodder, that was just some of them are just so they just make such an anti-hero out of the main villain, and they just stray so far from the real story just to create some sort of horror movie. I mean, those are the works that I would criticize, but not this show. I think it was brilliant. I think they did an amazing job of humanizing the victims and the community, and showing how it impacted everyone. And they really used the 10 episodes really well to show everyone's story, and it humanized everyone, including Jeffrey Dahmer, because he's a human being. And like I said, making him into a monster just to distance him from us doesn't really help, because he was one of us, and we need to understand why he went wrong, and why, you know, it went you know, not unnoticed, because it did go noticed and it wasn't dealt with, and that was probably the worst thing, and why that happened. So all these things are important. So yes, this show is justified. It does have a reason. It does exist for a reason. It does some good, and I think the critics need to just find something else to talk about, because, you know, they're just looking for something, and it's actually none of the criticisms have merit as far as I'm concerned. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I mean, I am guilty of enjoying the Jeremy Renner version. I think it's fascinating. It may not be accurate but in and of itself, it is fascinating because they're trying to explore something and do something interesting. It wasn't just exploitation; it was artistic. So there's elements like that that work, and then there are other things like the Kane Hodder, Ed Gein film, which was just pure exploitation trash. Yeah, so there's an interesting issue, and I feel bad for the families who have to relive what's happened. They probably never get any peace, but I really don't think. I mean, if you, the show's not the problem. The problem is they've lost their relative. That's still going to be the issue, even if they never made a TV movie about him or a TV series about him or anything. They'd still have to deal with that. So I don't think it's easy to just focus on the show and blame that. But if the show didn't exist, they'd still be traumatized and re-traumatized by things that they see or remember or are brought up or whatever. So, yeah, I just think give Ryan Murphy and the TV show a break. They did a really good job and they had really good intentions. And there are other things to focus on which are exploitative and negative and not really doing anything good for the world. I'm going to stop talking. Thanks. Bye.